Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. I've got a story I've been meaning to share for a while now. It's one that's stuck in my mind, mostly because it touches on something I've never fully understood. There's this question that keeps nagging me whenever I hear about breakups. Why do so many people leave the door open for their exes, even after it's all over? Think about it. Isn't a breakup supposed to mean a clean break? So why does it seem like some people still let their ex hang around? Texting, calling, sometimes even meeting up like nothing happened. Am I just old-fashioned for believing that once it's done, it should truly be done? Maybe I see things differently. But for me, keeping that kind of connection alive feels wrong. It's like pretending you've moved on while secretly holding on. Anyway, that brings me to the story I want to tell. A story about how everything started to fall apart between me and my fiancée Deborah. It's a story that made me confront that question from a deeply personal angle. Let me start at the beginning. I'd known Deborah for years, long before we ever dated. Back then, she was trapped in a very toxic relationship with a guy who, let's just say, was not a good person. I won't mention his real name, but he was the kind of man who made you tiptoe around him constantly. One moment he'd be screaming, the next he'd be distant and cold. And sometimes it was even worse than that. I saw the things she went through. Even though I wasn't directly involved, I never tried to interfere or play the savior. I knew she had to make the decision herself. And eventually she did. It was messy. It was painful. But she left him. When she walked away from that relationship, she wasn't the same. You could see it in her eyes, the vulnerability, the fragility. But I was there for her, not to start a romance, just as someone she could lean on. A few months later, after she'd begun to regain her footing, I asked her out. To my surprise, she said yes. Things progressed quickly from there. Maybe it was because we already had a strong emotional connection, or maybe because we both knew what we didn't want in a partner. We fell hard for each other, and within a year and a half we were engaged. It felt natural, like the logical next step. We decided to move in together since we were practically inseparable anyway. And honestly, those first few months living together were some of the happiest I've ever known. We cooked meals together, watched shows late into the night, took long walks around the neighborhood. Everything felt solid, grounded, real. I genuinely believed we were building something lasting. But as you've probably guessed, it didn't stay perfect. It began one ordinary evening. I couldn't find my phone. Checked the kitchen, the couch cushions, behind the pillows. All the usual spots. Nothing. So I grabbed Deborah's phone to call mine and make it ring. Totally innocent. But when I opened her call log to dial, something jumped out at me. Her ex's name. Right there in the recent calls. Not old, just a few days back. That hit me like a wall. This wasn't just some old contact in her phone. They'd been talking. I opened their messages, hoping I was mistaken. Hoping there was some reasonable explanation. But no, they had been texting like old friends. That didn't make sense. Not after everything she told me. Not after everything he put her through. I went into the bedroom where she was lying down and asked her directly, "Why are you still talking to him?" She looked shocked at first, clearly taken off guard, but she didn't deny it. She said it was harmless, just casual chatting. "He just checked in," she told me. But I was honest with her. I told her how it made me feel, that it made me uncomfortable, that it was crossing a line. She had told me she was done with him, that he belonged in the past, that what he did was unforgivable. She looked at me and said, "If it makes you feel better, I'll stop talking to him. I don't want this to come between us." That brought me some relief. I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a brief lapse and things could go back to normal. But they didn't. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle changes. Deborah, who had always been relaxed about her phone, became extremely protective of it. She never put it down, not even to go to the bathroom. If she was folding laundry, the phone was with her. If she stepped into another room, it went with her. First, I tried to dismiss it. Everyone's glued to their phones these days, right? Still, something felt off. The energy had shifted. I didn't want to become paranoid, but I couldn't ignore the signs. So one day, I did something I'd never done before. I went home during lunch, unannounced, to grab a hard drive I'd left behind. And that's where the next part of the story begins. That morning, I'd forgotten I had left the house earlier than usual. I had errands to run at work and needed a specific hard drive for a later meeting. Normally, I'd give Deborah a quick call out of courtesy. But that day I didn't. I figured I'd pop in, grab the drive and leave, no big deal. I got to the house, found the drive, and was halfway out the door when I thought, maybe I'll grab a coffee. There's this little cafe a few blocks away I go to often. I drove there, parked, went inside, nodded to the barista, and ordered my usual. A few minutes later, drink in hand, I turned to leave. And that's when I saw them. Deborah sitting in the corner with her ex. First, I didn't register it. They were deep in conversation. They hadn't noticed me yet. I stood there for a moment watching, then walked over to their table. I looked straight at her and said simply, "Don't come home." She froze, stunned, like I'd spoken a foreign language. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I didn't wait for an explanation. I turned and walked away, got in my car and drove off. Honestly, I can't even tell you how the rest of that day went. Physically I was there, but mentally I was somewhere else entirely. When I returned home that evening, she was already there. The moment she saw me, she stood and started explaining. She said her ex was going through something personal and had reached out needing someone to talk to. She insisted she was just being supportive, that it wasn't inappropriate, that it wasn't what I imagined. She painted it like some noble act I should admire, as if helping a man she claimed she had cut off was a selfless gesture. I let her speak without interrupting. When she finished, I asked the one question that truly mattered. "Didn't you promise me you were done talking to him?" She paused just for a second, but it was enough. That silence spoke louder than any excuse she could offer. Before she could respond, I asked again, "So, what are you doing with him now?" She scrambled for words, trying to form another explanation. I didn't need to hear it. I didn't want to. It was simple to me. When you're in a committed relationship, you don't keep emotional doors slightly open for someone else. That's not commitment, that's convenience. I told her bluntly that if she wasn't truly over him, it was too risky for me to keep investing in someone whose heart might belong elsewhere. Her expression twisted like she didn't understand. But she did. She just didn't expect me to say it aloud. I told her, "Go be with him if he's that important to you." She broke down in tears, saying she never meant to hurt me, that she couldn't explain it, begging me not to end things. But I was done. My mind had already moved on. I told her to pack her things and leave. I wasn't going to fight for a place I was supposed to already hold. She stood there crying, hoping I'd change my mind, but I didn't. When she realized I meant every word, she finally packed a few bags and left for her parents' house. I'm sure in her mind she thought it was temporary, that I'd cool off in a few days and we'd talk it through. But she didn't understand. I wasn't reacting out of anger. I was responding to a choice she had already made the moment she met him again. I waited a couple of days, thinking she might return for the rest of her things, that maybe, despite everything, she'd at least respect my words and handle things maturely. But nothing happened, so I decided to close it properly on my terms. I called her and asked her to come by. I think she assumed this was the moment I'd come to my senses. But when she arrived and saw her things already packed and waiting by the door, reality finally hit. This was the end. She called, but I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Then the messages started pouring in. First sad, then angry. She tried to hurt me the way she was hurting, calling me insecure, controlling, saying I couldn't handle a strong woman. And of course the final jab. She claimed her ex was better than me. I read them but didn't respond except once. "Go be with him." That was it. No more calls, no more arguments, just silence. After everything, I had time to reflect. Not just on Deborah but the entire situation. Honestly, I felt two things at once. Sadness and relief. Sadness because I truly wanted it to work. I was committed. I saw a future with her. But relief too because I finally saw things clearly. Not how I wished they were but how they actually were. Looking back, I took away a few lessons anyone in a relationship should remember. First, trust is everything. Once broken, you can try to mend it, but it's like taping together a shattered mirror. You'll still see the cracks, and you'll keep getting cut. Second, set boundaries early. If something feels wrong, speak up immediately. Don't hope love will fix it. I should have drawn the line the moment I saw her texting him. Instead, I gave her space, assuming she'd choose me on her own. That was a mistake. Third, actions speak louder than words. Anyone can promise anything, but what matters is what they do. She said she'd cut him off, but she didn't. That said everything I needed to know. Fourth, emotional independence is essential. You can't build a future with someone still tied to their past. It's like running a race with someone holding your ankle. You'll never get far. And finally, sometimes walking away is the only option. It hurts, yes, but staying in something broken, hoping it'll heal itself, hurts more. I didn't want to end things, but I wasn't going to lose myself holding on to someone who wasn't holding on to me. So that's my story. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Did I make the right call, or should I have given her another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts, because at the end of the day, relationships come down to choices. You choose to trust. You choose to protect that trust. And if someone chooses to break it, sometimes the only choice left is to let go.